Good morning, everyone. Can you find a place to sit down? Good morning. I'm Mary Lou Hughes. Welcome to Young at Heart. We're so happy that we're able to be together here once again. It's a special day. Who knows what's special about today? What, Linda? What, Linda? It's Earth Day. April 22nd, 1970, Senator Galen Nelson proposed an idea to hold a nationwide environmental teach-in day. This year's theme is Restore Our Earth. It's all about reducing our environmental footprint and fixing the damage we've already done. So today, try to do at least one thing to help our planet: recycle, do a litter pickup, or simply enjoy the beauty of nature. Okay, how many first-timers do we have here? Raise your hand. We are so glad that you are here, and we hope you'll come back. And do we have any guests? We know we have a guest speaker, Amy Russell, but you're going to hear more about her in a little while. You're in for a treat. Now let's think about birthdays. In April, Kirsten had a birthday on the 14th. Miss Shirley had a big birthday on the 15th, and she even had a solo sung to her by Carl. Dick Barkey, who I think many of you are still in contact with, had a birthday on the 23rd, or will have one tomorrow. Did I miss anyone with a birthday? Okay, song leaders, Rosemary, Carol, all of you, let's sing happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Miss. Happy birthday to you.
Now, I like to fool with numbers, except algebra, and my husband knew that. So I once heard that if you had more than 25 people in the room, you are going to have some people who have duplicate birthdays. We have 10 pairs of same birthdays. January 28th, Phyllis Carmack and Donna Kostelka. March 2nd, Janet Reifus and Nancy Stipe. March 19th, Ken Mayo and Bill Hensley. July 10th, June Ellis and me. July 11th, Judy Mayhew and Mary Parker. On the 29th, Duffy DeFaf, I never can say that, DeFafala, Duffy, thank you, and Jane Cooper on the 29th. August the 3rd, Virginia Johnson and Leon Darden. Jackie Howard and Joris Baca on September 23rd. Darlene Barnhill and Ginger Streeter on October the 23rd. Meryl Ann Walker and Ethelyn Hicks on December 13th. And going by the list I have, the most birthdays in a month, it tied between July and December, and the least birthdays in a month tied between February and June. There were 9 in July and December and 3 in February and June. So that's a lot of fun. Also, Sue Draper couldn't be here this morning. She has a dizzy spell, but she and Paul recently celebrated 58 years. Did I miss anyone else for an anniversary? So we want to remember them. I know that we have some prayer requests and names of people who need cards or need us to call them. Just think about them. I'm going to tell you the ones I know, and if you know some others, please let me know. Janet Reifus is not doing well. And Mary Lee Mayo, we need to remember her. Isla Brunson, you know, had the major heart surgery, and she's in rehab. And I don't know if you know that her daughter recently they moved to Okinawa, and I'm in contact with her. She graduated with one of my children, and she said her mother is doing well. Pat Reed, Shirley, you want to give us a report? She's trying very hard. And then Jane Cooper is having some knee problems, but every day I think she's doing a little bit better. Miss Bonnie's over there sporting a brand new shoe on her because she has a stress fracture. Ron Wepley had back surgery Monday, then skipped a day, and then had it again. As I told you, Sue has dizzy spells this morning. And then we always want to remember Ken, and we know that he's here with us today. Is there anyone else that we need to remember? Okay, and then Symphony, for sympathy, Patsy Oliphant lost her niece. It was a situation like Jane Threadkill and Carr Cooper. They were so close together, her niece, that she said they grew up as sisters in that. And then, of course, we want to remember Duffy and his family and Kirsten and Ron, because that's all one big family in that. So, and is there anyone else that... All right, this morning I want to share with you a devotion. It's a folk tale, and it's called The Tale of Three Trees. Once upon a mountaintop, 3 little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to be when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars, twinkling like diamonds above him. I want to hold treasure, he said. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I'll be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world. The second little tree looked out at a small stream trickling by on its way to the ocean. I want to be a strong sailing ship, he said. I want to travel mighty waters and carry powerful kings. I'll be the strongest ship in the world. The third little tree looked down into the valley below, where busy men and busy women worked in a busy town. I don't want to leave this mountaintop at all, she said. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I'll be the tallest tree in the world. Years passed. The rains came. The sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. One day, 3 woodcutters climbed the mountain. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful, perfect for me." With a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell. Now I'll be made into a beautiful chest, thought the first tree. I shall hold wonderful treasure. The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong. It's perfect for me." With the swoop of his shining axe, the second tree fell. Now I'm going to sail those mighty waters, thought the second tree. I'll be a strong ship fit for kings. The third tree felt her heart sink when the last woodcutter looked her way. She stood straight and tall and pointed bravely to heaven. But the woodcutter never even looked up. "Any kind of tree will do for me," he muttered, and with the swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought him to a carpenter's shop, but the busy carpenter wasn't thinking about treasure chests. Instead, his work-worn hands fashioned the tree into a feed box for animals. The once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or filled with treasure. He was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry farm animals. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took him to a shipyard, but no mighty sailing ships were being made that day. Instead, the once strong tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat. Too small, too weak to sail an ocean, not even a river. He was taken to a little lake, and every day he brought in loads of dead, smelly fish. The third tree was confused when the woodcutter just cut her into strong beams and left her in a lumber yard. What happened? The once tall tree wondered. All I ever wanted to do was to stay on the mountaintop and point to God. Many, many days and nights passed. The three trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby in the feed box. "I wish I could make a cradle for him," her husband whispered. The mother squeezed his hand and smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and sturdy wood. "This manger is beautiful," she said. And suddenly the first tree knew he was holding the greatest treasure in the world. One evening, a very tired traveler and his friends crowded into that old fishing boat. The traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out into the lake. Soon a thundering and thrashing storm arose. The little tree shuddered. He knew he didn't have the strength to carry that many passengers safely through the wind and rain. But that tired man awakened. He stood up, stretched out his hand, and said, "Peace." The storm stopped as quickly as it had begun. And suddenly, the second tree knew he was carrying the King of heaven and earth. On Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were yanked from the forgotten woodpile. She flinched as she was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. She shuddered when soldiers nailed a man's hands to her. She felt ugly, harsh, and cruel. But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose and the earth trembled with joy beneath her, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. It made that first tree beautiful. It made that second tree strong. And every time people thought of the third tree, they would think of God. And that was better than being the tallest tree in the world. Will you bow your heads, please? Dear God, thank you for this beautiful day that provides us with an opportunity for fellowship in our church that we've wanted for many months. Today, as we celebrate Earth Day, we give thanks for the beauty of nature all around us, created by you. Give us wisdom to know how to care for our earth. We lift up those who are ill and pray each day provides them with restored health. And to those who grieve for the loss of a special one, may they feel your love and the love of friends surrounding them. God, we pray as we remember the story of the three trees that we can acknowledge that sometimes you have a plan for us that's different from our plans. Grant us the wisdom to always know that you are with us. We come to you today thanking you for another beautiful day as we remember today is that yesterday we worried about. We ask our prayer in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. We want to think about our church activities now. Our church is doing a church-wide study of Max Lucado. You'll get through this. If you aren't a member of a Sunday school class, please find one to join. You've only missed 2 sessions, and it is really wonderful. Our next meeting for Young at Heart will be May 13th. Our speaker is going to be Lieutenant Colonel Jay Diamond, who is the Director of Academics at the B-52 Flying Training Unit, and he's also a member of our church. And your hostess is going to be a lady I have admired since I met her many years ago, Pat Berry. And other things going on every Wednesday morning, and I think a lot of other mornings, Tony Thornton has some really good thoughts for us on Facebook. And Sione, it's Wednesday at noon, and he also has a Sunday school class. And then, this is the latest book for the book club, and I don't know the date, but it's in June. It'll be in June, so it looks to be a very good book. I have a question for you. What kind of man was Boaz before he got married? Ruthless. And here, all you men out there are motor vehicles mentioned in the Bible. Jehovah drove Adam and Eve out of the garden in a fury. David's triumph was heard throughout the land. Honda, because the apostles were all in one accord. 2 Corinthians 4:8 describes going out in service in a Volkswagen Beetle. We are pressed in every way, but not cramped beyond movement. Is there any other business that needs to be brought up? I noticed, where are you? We're collecting the cards. Joyce.
Yes, I'm still collecting, used, new, greeting cards of all kinds, and I take them to Council on Aging, and they read them completely, so you don't even have to worry about cutting out the wording if you don't want to. And they are always thrilled every time I go in. They use them to read the cards, and rather than buying cards, birthday cards to send all of their members, they use these free fun ones, which I think is wonderful, saving money, and gives us an opportunity to help them out without a lot of bother. Just bring the cards here to the church, where I will take them.
If you couldn't hear Joyce, we're collecting still the old cards and she's faithfully done this for us. Anything else? Okay, Lisa, you want to do some door prizes? Kathy Moore. Yeah, we're happy to have Colonel Diamond with us this morning.
Rosemary Patterson. All right, so I'll mix them up again and have Cheryl come back on another for us. You know, so put your work on your first visit, huh? James Taylor.
Oh, great.
Thank y'all.
Is that it, Lisa?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I want to share a little story to you. It's called A Letter to the IRS. This is a true story, and I think some of us in this room can associate with this, even if not with our children, with neighbors' children, with grandchildren. Dear sirs, I am responding to your letter denying the deduction for 2 of the 3 dependents I claimed on my 1994 federal tax return. Thank you. I have questioned for years whether these are my children or not. They are evil and expensive. It's only fair that since they are minors and not my responsibility, that the government, who evidently is now taxing me more to care for these waifs, knows something about them and what to expect over the next year. You may apply next year to reassign them to me and reinstate the deduction. This year, they're yours. The oldest, Christine, is 17. Brilliant. Just ask her. I suggest you put her to work in your office where she can answer people's questions about their returns. No formal training, but that hasn't seemed to hamper her knowledge of any other subject you can name. Taxes should be a breeze. Next year is college. I think it's wonderful you're going to be responsible for that expense. Now, while you mull that open, keep it in mind she has a truck. Doesn't run at the moment, so you have the immediate decision of appropriating some Department of Defense funds to fix the vehicle or get up early to drive her to school. Now she's got a boyfriend. Oh, joy. Now, while she possesses all the wisdom of the universe, her alleged mother and I have felt it best to occasionally remind her of the virtues of abstinence and, in the face of overwhelming passion, safe sex. Now, this is always uncomfortable, and I'm relieved you're going to handle it in the future. Patrick is 14. Had my suspicions about this one. His eyes are a little close together for normal people. He may be a tax examiner oneself if you don't incarcerate him first. This past February, rudely awakened at 3 in the morning by a police officer who was bringing him home. He and his friends were toilet papering houses. In the future, you want him delivered to the local IRS office or sent directly to Ogden, Utah. You know, kids at 14 will do anything on a dare. Purple hair, permanent dye, temporary dye, what's the big deal? Learn to live with it. Now, you're going to have a lot of time, because he's sitting out a few days because he instigated a food fight. But I'll give your phone number to the vice principal. Oh, yes, he and all his friends have those raging hormones. It'll be much more peaceful for us when he lives in your home. Do not leave any of them unsupervised with girls, explosives, inflammables, inflatables, vehicles, or telephones. Now, Heather is an alien. She slid through a time warp and appeared quite by magic one year. I think this one is yours, 10 going on 21. She came from a bad trip in the 60s, tie-dyed clothes, beads, sandals, and hair that looks like Tiny Tim's. But fortunately, you are raising my taxes to help offset the pinch of her remedial reading course. Hooked on Phonics is so expensive, all the schools dropped it. Good news, you can buy it yourself for half the amount of the deduction you're denying me. She cannot speak English. Most people under 20 understand the patois she fashioned out of Valley Girl boys in the hood, yuppie political doublespeak. I don't. The school is sending her to a speech pathologist who has her roll her R's. That adds a refreshing Mexican-Irish touch to her voice. She wears her hats backward, baggy pants. She wants one of those ears pierced 4 more times. There's a fascination with tattoos that worries me, but I know you can handle it. Now, bring a truck when you come to get her. She kind of nests in her room. I think it's easier to move the entire thing than to find out what actually is in there. You denied 2 of the 3 exemptions, so it's only fair you get to pick which 2 you take. I prefer you take the youngest. I'll still go bankrupt with Kristen's college, but I'm free. If you take the 2 oldest, I would have time for counseling before Heather becomes a teenager. If you take the 2 girls, I won't feel so bad about putting Patrick in a military academy. Please let me know your decision as soon as possible, as I've already increased the withholding on my W-4 to cover $395 in additional tax, and I made a down payment on an airplane. Yours truly, Bob Mullen. Note, the taxpayer in question said, rats. They sent me the refund and allowed the deductions. I mean, that is just unbelievable in that. So, okay. Who was the greatest comedian in the Bible? Samson, he brought the house down. What excuse did Adam give to his children as to why he no longer lived in Eden? Your mother ate us out of house and home. Okay. I have something I want to share with you just real quick. This is just a personal thing with me. When I grew up, we used to have, they called them hobos or tramps, would come around, and my mother always fed them. I was scared to death. I ran and hid in the closet. And one day my daddy told me, they're just somebody's daddy trying to get home, because this was World War II and that. Well, I used to ask my mother, how come they always come to our house and they don't go to anybody else's house, you know? And she said, they have a way of marking the curb. Well, years ago, I was looking through one of these little magazines that you get to have all these kind of things. And here was this cat plaque. And this is what it says. The story of the kind-hearted woman. When hobos were common to the American experience, they had a vocabulary of easy-to-understand signs, chalked or scratched on pavement or fence posts in front of houses to advise or warn off those among their ranks who might follow. The simple cat was used to identify the dwelling of a kind-hearted woman, someone who would share nourishment and shelter. And that was my mother. She fed them what she fed us. She warmed it up. And you know, when you think about it, as I look around, what did we have as we grew up? Hobo parties where we thought it was fun to eat out the tin can. You know, that was something, but there's always, okay. All right, now we come to our important time where we get to meet our speaker. How many of you in this room are involved with family genealogy? You really like to do that? Some that, okay. Well, we're honored today to have Air Force historian Amy Russell as our guest speaker. If you think you have hard work researching your family, Amy's work involves research, analyzing, recording, and interpreting the past of the Air Force as recorded in many sources. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas, Amy Russell attended the University of North Texas, where she earned a bachelor in sociology, a bachelor in history, and then began work on her master's in United States military history. In 2009, she accepted a position with the Department of Defense as the Palace Acquire intern for the United States Air Force at the Air Combat Command History Office in Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. Amy trained as a Major Command historian. Now, I did a little research on Major Command, and this is what I found out. Major Command is the highest level of command, only below Headquarters Air Force and directly above Numbered Air Force. And what I read said there were 10 major commands, and Barksdale being one. She also served as a wing historian with the 1st Fighter Wing and their F-52 mission. In 2010, she welcomed her daughter Daisy to the adventure. After spending 3 years with Air Combat Command, Amy took on the challenge of what was then known as the 8th Air Force Museum. Given the job of bringing the museum into the 21st century and rebranding it the Barksdale Global Power Museum, Amy and her team spent 8 years transforming the museum into something new and relevant. In May of 2020, she left the museum and accepted a job with the 307th Bomb Wing, going back to her roots as a wing historian. Amy and her daughter stay active in our community as well. Amy has served as the community lay director for Cross Bayou Emmaus, as well as director of children's ministry for Life Water Church. Let's give a big welcome to our Amy.
Thank you guys so much. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. It has been over a year since I have been able to come to a group like yours and talk about, Barksdale history, who we are and what we do for the Air Force, and just have a good time giving you a little bit of a history lesson. This is the best part of the job when you're a historian. I think I was made to be a teacher, but I don't like grading papers. So this was kind of the best way to do it. I could get in, I could teach everybody a little bit of something, and still be able to get in and do the research. So I grabbed some notes with me today. I don't normally speak off of notes, but I had some good numbers that I wanted to share with you guys when we get a little farther into this, and I didn't want to lie to you, so I figured I would get my numbers straight. Today I kind of want to talk about the history of Barksdale Air Force Base, kind of where we came from, how we started, and I want to talk to you about the units that we have there, because we have some of the oldest active units in the Air Force today, just right down the road, and that's pretty amazing. We are one of the oldest continually active Air Force bases that is open today as well, so the history that we've got is pretty amazing. And then I've brought a few little things that I'm going to share with you guys, some pretty neat artifacts that I normally, when I was the director at the museum, these were my little goodie box that I would take with me when I would go speak to young airmen. We have this thing called FTAC, and FTAC is your first term airmen, and these are the guys, this is their first base, they're just coming in, they're their baby airmen, and we would kind of go and talk to them and get them excited about who they were going to be working with, where they were going to be serving. We want these young airmen to know their history and the heritage of their units, because when you know where you came from and the people, what they did before you, I feel that you're going to buy into it a little bit more. You're going to have some pride in what you're doing, and you're going to be able to do your job better. So I've got some cool things that I brought with me that these are not on display at the museum. They have only come out when I have taken them around. So you are a very lucky group that you'll get to see these items today. And you're like, what are these items? I would really like to know. But you're just gonna have to wait. So, like I said, Barksdale Air Force Base is one of the oldest continually active bases in the Air Force today. When we first started, does anybody know what year Barksdale opened to the public? I've heard 34, I've heard 39. They're both wrong, but let's keep going. One more guess? Well, lower than 34. You were really close. Go up. 33! Yes, 1933 is when we finally opened to the public. So how did we get to this point? How did we end up with a base here in Bossier City, Louisiana? You know, this is always the question people ask. And to not just have a base here, but to still have an active base here with some really incredible missions going on. Well, that kind of goes back to the city of Shreveport. So the city of Shreveport really wanted a base in this area. And so they contacted the Army, because remember, at this point in the 20s, the Air Force that we know today does not exist yet. It's the Air Service. It's not even the Air Corps yet. That doesn't happen until 1926. So they contact the Army and are like, hey, we want a base. We need you to come and check out the area and see what we can do. So they have a gentleman come down, he kind of flies around the area, and at that time, for new airfields, the deal was, number one, the city had to donate all of the land. The federal government wasn't going to pay a dime. Surprise, surprise. So the land had to be donated. You had to have 1,000 acres of level land for a runway, and then you had to have at least 20 square miles of land to use as a bombing range. Because remember, at this time, we don't have the ability to fly real far. So if we're gonna practice what we're doing, it's gotta be right there. So they come down, they fly around the area, and they come up with two spots. One is an area out by Cross Lake, and the other is what we know today as Barksdale Air Force Base, this area just east of us. And Shreveport looked at it all and they said, well, we don't want it on the Shreveport side, we know that. So they came over here. Well, all of this land, this was cotton fields, pea patches, farmland, this was old plantation land from way back. And so they went to these different farmers and started asking them to sell. Most of them did, and they got most of the land, and there were a couple holdouts. And so the city of Shreveport is kind of like, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get these guys to sell? So they decided that they were going to take a trip down to Baton Rouge and go talk to the governor. Probably one of the most famous Louisiana governors ever. Probably the most corrupt Louisiana governor ever. And who was it? Huey P. Long, the Kingfish. So they head down to Baton Rouge to go talk to the governor. Well, the problem is Caddo Parish did not have a great relationship with the governor. You see, Caddo had never voted for him in an election. That did not make him happy. So when they get down there and are like, hey, we need your help. We've got these farmers. We need them to sell. Here's what we're doing. He's like, well, what's in it for me? You know, because this is how he worked. I don't care about you. What's in it for me? And so they struck a deal. Now, Long had a stake in a textbook company. And all the schools in Louisiana used Long's textbooks, except Caddo Parish. So the deal was, you buy my textbooks and you put them in your schools, and I'll get those guys to sell for you. So they made the deal, they struck the deal, they bought the textbooks, he got the guys to sell. Now, want to know what they did with those textbooks? Put them in a closet in a school. So they went to the school, but they didn't actually use them. So they got the guys to sell, the land was donated, and you have, in 1933, the opening of Barksdale Field. So you finally get this airfield. At the time, we were actually in competition with Montgomery, Alabama, and Fort Worth, Texas, to get a base. Now, if you know Air Force, if you've been around for a little bit, you know in Montgomery, we have Maxwell Air Force Base, and in Fort Worth, we have Carswell Air Force Base, but we got ours first, so we win. So that's kind of how we got to be Barksdale. But where does the name come from? Anybody know who we're named after? Well, it wasn't a mayor. A man, yes, it was a man. So Eugene Hoy Barksdale, Lieutenant Barksdale, he was from Goshen Springs, Mississippi. So the deal was at the time, as we were building all of these new airfields, we wanted a way to honor those who had served in the Air Service who had lost their life. To be a part of the Air Service at that time, it was very dangerous. Aviation is very new. We are still learning every day. What can our planes do? What can our bodies handle? How is this going to work? And so it was very, very dangerous. And if you go to these older bases like a Barksdale or a Langley or a Maxwell, a lot of the roads, a lot of the streets on the bases, they're named for people who were killed at that base during training missions, early training missions, and B, people who really helped make the Air Force what it is today. There's a whole section, so Langley is, like we said, where I started my career with the Air Force, and it's kind of divided in half. And one half of it is those names of people who were killed in those early training missions, and then the other half is those who kind of helped make the Air Force what it is today. So we were trying to figure out who to name the base after, and that's when we came up with Lieutenant Barksdale. Being from Goshen Springs, Mississippi, he was about as local as somebody we were going to get at the time. And he was a really incredible airman. He was a World War I aviator. He had 3 confirmed kills to his name flying during the First World War. After the war, he came back to the States. He did tests and training and all of these other kinds of things and was killed in 1926 when his aircraft crashed. So it was kind of a natural selection. Oops, excuse me. It was a natural selection to go ahead and pick him. So that is who we are named after. Now, what's really fun is when my kids would come to the museum and you would ask, where did we get our name? And they'd be like, I know. And you're like, okay, where did we get our name? They're like, the road. You're named after the road. No, but so close. So it's always kind of fun to be able to tell that story of Lieutenant Barksdale. If you get a chance to come to the museum, I'm always going to prop up the museum because I love it. We have a room in there that is a recreation of Lieutenant Barksdale's childhood home, actually. Everything in there was taken from his home a few years ago. He had a sister who still lived on the property that they all grew up on. And she finally allowed folks out there, this is like 20 years ago now, but out there to kind of save some things. The house was falling down. It was going to be condemned. And we knew that we needed to save what we could. And so the furniture out there in this room, in this display gallery, it's from his home. It's, the desk that they had in there, everything is from the home. And then we took detailed pictures of like the slat work and the parlor, and so we could recreate that and really make it look like you're taking a step back in time and you're seeing where Barksdale and his brothers and sisters grew up, which is pretty neat. All right, so first thing, I'm not going to pull it out now, but I will for you guys later. This is actually one of the original bonds that was given to one of the families when they sold the land to the city of Shreveport to make Barksdale Field. So, interesting story about the museum. For many years, it wasn't taken care of maybe the way that it should have been, and so a lot of things were kind of shoved different places. And so when I got there in 2012, you know, we were updating it, we were cleaning things out, we were organizing it, and we just found this in the drawer of a desk, just hanging out. So it's kind of neat that we have this now, and we can look at this and kind of have this little piece of history. So I'll let you guys look at that in a little while. The other neat thing that I have that I want to be able to show you. So I said that Barksdale was a World War I aviator. Well, his mother was a school teacher, so she must have taught him well, because not only did he write home to his mom almost every day, he also kept a detailed diary. And that is what this is right here. This is Lieutenant Barksdale's World War I diary. Up here at the top it says Barksdale E.H. Diary, and on the back it says E.H. Barksdale. Very, very detailed of everything he did. Talks about friends that he made. You know, if friends were in a plane crash, he's going to tell you what happened to them, and if they're recovering, every day he's going to give you an update. If he is on a training mission and is firing so many rounds off, he's going to detail that. When he's first in London, before they go to France to fly those first missions, he's going to detail what his day is from the moment he wakes up till he goes to bed. So it's very, very, a really wonderful depiction of what life was like, not just for him, but for the average lieutenant at the time. We don't have a lot of these. This is so rare to be able to have. Most of them are very deteriorated, if they exist at all. And the neat thing about his is it is, well, it's pretty incredible. And I figured we would look up today and see what he was doing, you know, a little over 100 years ago today. What do you think? Let's see here. It is the 22nd, is that correct? 22nd, okay. Beautiful day, lots of flying. I flew until 8:30 p.m. So he's not flying combat missions yet. He's doing some training. He's about to start combat missions, okay? But he is in France while he's flying. So it doesn't have a lot today, but it's pretty incredible. I mean, he's got beautiful penmanship, which I realize you can't see from there, but it's quite lovely. So we'll have this up here, and after lunch, I would love for you guys to be able to come up and take a look at this, because I think it's really special. So talking about World War I want to talk a little bit about our units that we have at Barksdale, because their history dates back to World War I. So the 2nd Bomb Wing is the active duty wing at Barksdale, and they're our host wing. And they are one of the oldest active bomb wings in the Air Force today. In fact, we were the oldest bomb wing until the 7th Bomb Wing, which is out at Dyess Air Force Base, actually combined with another unit that was 7 days older than we were. So they win. But we're still one of the oldest out there. So you have the 2nd Bomb Wing, and then the flying squadrons that are a part of the 2nd Bomb Wing. The 96th Bomb Squadron, which is the first of the American units to ever drop a bomb in combat. It's pretty neat to think about, you know, you all see those big B-52s flying overhead all the time, right? Well, World War I, there's no bomb bay door that opens, no buttons that are pushed. You want to know how you drop a bomb in combat? You throw it over the side. You drop it out over the side. There is no pushing or opening of anything. It is just you pull it and you drop it. I don't want to do that. I just would like to put that out there. I have no desire. So it's kind of neat to think about, you know, in less than 100 years, really, how far the technology has come from, you know, dropping a bomb out the side of your airplane to what, you know, Jay does with our airplanes today, and what he trains our kids to do with these airplanes today. It's pretty phenomenal. So you've got these amazing units, the 96, the 20th. These are all units that started during World War I. All the 2nd Bomb Wing units started during World War I. So it's pretty amazing to have that history and that heritage. So then you look at our kind of who the 2nd Bomb Wing answers to. And they answer to a group called 8th Air Force. And they are the numbered Air Force that is also here at Barksdale. So 2nd Bomb Wing's boss is 8th Air Force. 8th Air Force's boss is one of the major commands, Air Force Global Strike Command. And they're all here at Barksdale. So when you think about it, if 2nd Bomb Wing does something wrong, like their boss and their boss's boss get to all kind of converge down on you to tell you what you've done, you know? But they're all here at Barksdale today. You have an active duty wing, one of the only, there's only 2 wings that fly the B-52 today, 2 active duty wings, and one of them's here at Barksdale. And then the numbered Air Force that is in charge of all bombers in the Air Force is here at Barksdale today. And then the command that is in charge of all bombers and all of our ICBMs. Does anybody know what that is? Oh, see, you're so smart. You got all the answers. I think you're gonna win one of my prizes in my box. Yes, ICBM is Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. So Global Strike is in charge of all of the bombers and all of the missiles. All of that takes place right here in Bossier City, Louisiana. That's pretty incredible, y'all. I don't know if you realize what a big deal that is, how important Barksdale Air Force Base is in the grand scheme of everything. So 8th Air Force, they have a nickname. Anybody know what they're known by? I got a face back here going, I have no idea. Their nickname is the Mighty Eighth. Has anybody ever heard that? Yeah, so they got that name during the Second World War. 8th Air Force had more accolades, more Medal of Honor recipients, flew more missions, had more victories than any other unit out there, and that's where they got that name. And here's where I brought my numbers, because some of these are just really hard to even believe. So when we talk about D-Day, a lot of times we think of the ships, pounding the beaches to prepare for our troops to invade, right? We also have to remember there were 2,300 sorties flown by 8th Air Force that day to prepare those beaches as well. So it's not just the Navy getting ready for our infantry to go up, it's the Air Corps as well. By mid-1944, the total force of 8th Air Force was over 200,000 men. That's incredible. They were estimated that we probably had about 350,000 Americans serve in 8th Air Force during the Second World War. At its peak, 8th was launching 2,000 bombers and 1,000 fighters for one mission. One mission. Each bomber could have up to 10 guys inside, depending on what it was. If we're flying a B-17, B-17? Yes, B-17, exactly. If we're flying a B-17, you got 10 guys in there, and we're launching 2,000 of them for one mission. In total, 8th Air Force flew 600,000 sorties. So a sortie is like one mission going out and coming back. Dropped over 700,000 tons of bombs. Gunners shot down 6,000 planes. Fighters shot down 5,000 planes. And probably we talk about strafing, hitting the guys on the ground, another 4,000 planes that were destroyed. Bringing the total of aircraft destroyed by 8th Air Force to 15,000 aircraft. Those are huge numbers. Now, the problem with that is you also have really high casualties, right? So half of all Air Force casualties were suffered by 8th Air Force. You have 17 Medal of Honor recipients, 220 Distinguished Service Crosses, 850 Silver Stars, 7,000 Purple Hearts, 46,000 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 442,000 Air Medals, 261 Fighter Aces. A fighter ace is somebody who has shot down 5 enemy aircraft. When you shoot down 5, that makes you an ace. 261 aces. And 31 of those aces shot down 15 or more aircraft. That is pretty incredible. So in July of 1945, the war in Europe has ended, and so 8th Air Force packs up and they head to Okinawa, and they are there ready for the invasion of Japan. You gotta think how crazy that would have been if they had actually done that. What a difference that could have made. But luckily we didn't have to do that, and the war ended. So we come back to Barksdale, and Barksdale was always a flying training base. So we were always training our pilots and our air crews. And we also we had the Women Auxiliary Corps join Barksdale in 1941. So a lot of really amazing things happening. And then in 1958, we finally get the plane we all know and love, y'all are so smart. I'm so proud. Yes, the B-52. In 1963, the second bomb wing comes to Barksdale, and Barksdale starts to take shape as what we know it today, which is pretty awesome. When we sit down to talk a little bit about kind of where Barksdale has come and the people that have passed through here and the units that have passed through here, you really can't talk about air power history without Barksdale. We are such an integral part of all of that. I hope you understand how special that makes Barksdale, like how incredible it is, how lucky you are to have it right in your own backyard. So incredible. There have been some really, really amazing missions that airmen from Barksdale have been a part of. One of the ones that we talk quite a bit about is Operation Secret Squirrel. I know, right? Has anybody ever heard of Operation Secret Squirrel? Yeah, well, of course, because you know all my answers. Rosemary, you're my new favorite. I want you to know that.
She's been here a long
I love it. Well, I'm going to tell you the story of Operation Secret Squirrel, and then we'll wrap it up, because I think this is another really important one to know. So in August of 1990, you have Saddam Hussein invade the sovereign nation of Kuwait. This is a big no-no, right? So the UN and the United States are like, hey, you got to get out. If you don't get out, we're coming in after you. And so the planning starts, and what we know as Operation Desert Shield is this preparation to go in and make Saddam leave and stay in his own borders. And so during that time, there is actually a top secret mission that is being planned to launch from Barksdale. And the idea is that we're going to go and fly what we know as a round-robin mission. So we're launching from Barksdale, we're going to go out and drop weapons, and we're coming back home. We're not landing anyplace else. And so the day comes, and it is January of 91, January 16th, 1991, and he hasn't gone anywhere. So 7 B-52s launch from Barksdale Air Force Base to go and take out strategic targets in Iraq so that the rest of our guys can go in as uncontested as possible. This was a huge mission. These guys that are flying this, they are young airmen at the time. They are, lieutenants and captains. We still had tail gunners in our B-52, and they are like A1Cs and buck sergeants. Like, they're babies in the grand scheme of things. None of these guys have seen combat before. There is one Vietnam veteran on one of those airplanes. That's it, just one. The rest of these guys are all young. They have not been in the Air Force all that long, and here they are about to go out and fly this mission that they don't really know how the rest of the world is going to react to yet. We're flying 7 B-52s halfway around the world. We don't really know at that point who's siding with the Iraqis and who's siding with us. We have to fly over Libyan airspace, and if you don't know the history of the United States and Libya coming out of the 1980s, it's not good, so let's just go with that. They've got to fly over Libyan airspace, and when they go to brief the guys in charge at Offutt Air Force Base at the time, General looks at one of these young captains who's briefing and says, okay, you're flying over Libya, and 2 MiGs come up and meet you and tell you to land. What are you going to do? He was like, I don't know, sir, I guess we land. And he's like, no, you don't land. They're going to shoot you out of the sky. But don't worry, we'll pick you up in the Mediterranean. You know, these guys are like, ah, whew, okay. You know, it just got real. You know, like, this is real world situation now. You know, so they get in these airplanes and they take off and they fly this mission, and they're trying to fly grouped together very close with tankers the whole way. Obviously, you have to refuel multiple times to do this. And they think, well, if we fly along with tankers, they'll think we're either a training mission, or maybe people will just assume we're a big group of tankers. And again, nobody's supposed to know what's going on, not even the tankers. But they know. They know what's happening. And as they're passed from tanker to tanker, they're getting these messages down to them. Good luck. Go get them. God bless. They know what's happening. So they go over. They're also going to be launching these air-launched cruise missiles that the B-52 carries, the Calcums. And at that time, there was only a nuclear version of that. Well, they had converted all of these. They'd converted 35 of them to be a conventional weapon. So no nuclear blast, just another big boom. And they convert these weapons, and we actually launched the entire Air Force inventory of them, launched all 35 that we had. And it was a huge, huge success. It was over 35 plus hours of flying. At the time, it was the longest combat mission in history. How incredible. You know, this is where this idea of long-range strike starts, and that's what we are all about at Barksdale today. We can reach out and touch you wherever you are, you know, and this is where it begins. It's so incredible. These gentlemen that flew this mission now come to the museum every year for a reunion, and they have a reunion toast together and talk about, you know, how this mission really changed so much for them, changed so much for the Air Force. We now knew that these planes that were old at that time could do this, that this was possible, you know, and then to look at the missions that we flew at the very beginning of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom after 9/11, those are possible because of what we did during Desert Storm, because of what these B-52s did. So pretty incredible. I hope you've enjoyed all the little fun facts that I've had for you today. I love talking about history. I love talking about Air Force history, and what we do here at Barksdale is just incredible. And I don't think those guys often realize how important what they do is, or realize the history behind it. So the one thing that I always tell my kids when they come through, and I'm sure, do I have anybody who's served in the military in here? All right, well, thank you for your service, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. And I want you to know that when my young airmen come through, or my kindergartners, it doesn't matter how old they are when they come through, I always remind every group that when you see somebody out and about and they're wearing an I served hat, or whatever it is that distinguishes that they have served in the military, go up and tell them thank you. Because I cannot do what I do today without you, and without our men and women at Barksdale today. They make it possible for us to be here, for us to come together and have lunch, and for you to be able to come together and worship on Sundays, and that is such a blessing. So thank you guys. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service. I appreciate you so much. So thank you.
Wow, I told you you were in for a treat, and we really, really were in for a treat to have her. Okay, which area of Palestine was especially wealthy? The area around the Jordan. The banks were always overflowing. Okay, Amy, we are just so thankful, and I know we will be interested to see, and I think we all realize how important the objects are that you brought when you put on your white gloves, because we just don't want to touch those. Okay, before we have our blessing, can everybody see what this says? Sometimes people have a hard time seeing it. And you know, that's just like us. Sometimes we kind of forget that he's always there. It's always here. But a little Cub Scout, I think I was teaching at Bel Air. And if I turn it upside down, sometimes it takes me a while to set it up through the eyes and get it. But I see Jesus. But anyway, before we do a blessing, my husband was the greatest collector of blonde jokes because he married a dumb blonde, I can tell you. But this is one of his favorite jokes, and I have a collection. Two blondes living in Texas were sitting on a Galveston beach one evening, looking at the moon and talking. One blonde says to the other, "Which do you think is further, Florida or the moon?" The other blonde rolls her eyes, turns, and says, "Hello? Can you see Florida from here?" Rosemary, would you give us a blessing before we eat?
Our Father, we come to you right now, giving you thanks and praise for our ability to come to this house of worship and come today to enjoy fun and food and fellowship. We've longed for a year now, God, and you know how happy we are to be here in your house of worship. Be with us as we have a good time and enjoy talking and eating lunch together. Bless the people that made our food, and bless this food for the nourishment of our bodies, and keep us safe as we go our separate ways when we leave. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Lisa, how you want to take over for lunch?
Yes, I think if everybody just enjoy fellowship for a few minutes, we'll be starting lunch in about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes?
About 2. Yeah, they're ready now, I think.
Okay, I have another one for you. What's the first thing Adam and Eve did after they were kicked out? They really raised Cain. Oh, I like this one. Why didn't Noah go fishing? There he was on a boat. He only had 2 fish. We have a good time, we can visit. didn't go until he got his COVID shot. But occasionally he will preach down there. But he does something